NBA playoffs. Wonderful. All the top seeds advance. All you Net fans that wanted the Nets to advance, including yours truly, wanted to see the Celtics get eliminated, just absolutely got abused in the first round. You heard from our great guest, Khris Middleton, what happened and what his thoughts are going to be in the offseason for the Brooklyn Nets. But throughout the first round, Phoenix got all they can handle. And I was very surprised that Devin Booker came back as early as he has. With an injury like that, a hamstring injury of that magnitude, and a first-degree hamstring injury like that, you expect him not to play in the last 2 games of this series. And I was wrong. It really wasn't even about Devin Booker. It was about Chris Paul. This is Chris Paul's team. I've told everybody this. You could say whatever you want about Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. Ayton might not even be on the team next year. I think the Phoenix Suns will extend him because Chris Paul is there, and he's like a little brother to Chris Paul. But Chris Paul needed to step up, and boy, oh boy, in the final 2 games of this series, he did. And he did everything he had to put the team on his shoulders to win these games and knock off the Pelicans, who have a very good future. CJ McCollum, fantastic talent. He didn't have Williamson, who is going to possibly be there next year. I know everybody thinks he's going to be a Knick. I doubt it. He missed a whole season. When they get him back and the players and the depth that they have over there, they're going to be fantastic. They knock off a great Pelicans team that really showed you what they could be in the future. Dallas knocks off a Utah Jazz team, which I don't know what's going on with that team and that organization. Donovan Mitchell speaks out at the end of the game when he gets eliminated, saying that he's got to do more, he's got to be better. I don't know how much better he could be. Averaged almost 25, 26 points a game in that series. He was the point guard. He was the offensive talent. He was the defensive player at the perimeter. I don't know what you expect him to do more of, but he might not be doing it on the Utah Jazz, Speedy.
No, it seems like they just really looked, just said they looked distracted by all this bad press that they've been getting throughout the season. Because remember, they were underwhelming throughout the season, too. They were supposed to be a top 3 seed in the West again. Had to really fight even just to get up to 5. There was Denver in the range, who finishes as the number 6 seed. Minnesota was climbing at certain points. They were a top 4 seed. They just really looked distracted. And they're a deep team. They're a good defensive team. They're a team that moves the ball, and they didn't show it all series long.
I think Utah is going to be looking in the offseason at either getting better or trading away pieces where they can rebuild. And that means Donovan Mitchell, who he hasn't said it, but his agent and his team have said that he is not happy over there and he wants out, which means there's a very good chance there might be a team in New York that'll be very interested in him. So,
and no, it's not the Brooklyn Nets.
No, it is the Knicks. He grew up a Knicks fan. I expect the Knicks to go heavily after him in the offseason. They're not very happy that the Knicks showed up to one of the Dallas games. They have reached out to the NBA and Adam Silver, and Adam Silver's going to investigate this. The Knicks could be fined because they could be talking to a player that they shouldn't be talking to as the season progressively is going on. But Donovan Mitchell's still under contract, and the only way the Knicks could talk to him is if the Utah Jazz allow him to talk to them. So I don't know what's going on with that, but it doesn't seem like anything good. I think the Utah Jazz will fire their coach in the offseason.
Yeah.
I think Donovan Mitchell could be on his way out. I really do.
There's also some rumors that he was probably going to take the Spurs job after Popovich retires.
Golden State and Denver, I'm not surprised this series went the way it did. Porter not playing, Murray not playing. They had no chance. You have to give a lot of credit to Boogie Down Cousins, who played a fantastic game in game number 5. Did all he can to keep this team in it. Joker, fantastic player, MVP candidate every single year. He put the team on his shoulders. The fact that they were a 6 seed throughout the season with no depth, nothing on that team, you have to give them a lot of credit to be where they were. And they played a Golden State Warrior team that just has too much talent. It's just a loaded team. And now they're going to be going into a series against Memphis, who are much more acrobatic, much more athletic, can keep up with the Golden State Warriors, much better defensive team than the Denver Nuggets are. That's going to be a fun series. Shout out to Minnesota. They had a very good year. They were the best offensive team in the NBA. You can't attack them, but when you had a chance to win 2 games in this series and you were up by 20 points, you let Memphis come all the way back to win those games. That's why you lost this series. Minnesota would have been the surprise of the playoffs if they knocked off the Memphis Grizzlies, as well as the Memphis Grizzlies were the surprise team in the Western Conference, being the 2nd seed in the NBA. So Minnesota got knocked off because of those 2 games where they had a 20-point lead going into the second half and coughed it up.
For Minnesota's future, that'll be either a learning experience or define who they are, depending on how this core ends up going, because that's 3 10-point leads and 2 20-point leads in Game 3 and Game 5, and then 3 10-point leads in all 3 of those those games, including Game 6. Golden State-Denver series, yeah, it was inevitable that was going to happen. Joker played his heart out. Hats off to him. Already an MVP finalist, could very much win it again with the season he put together. Golden State, they had just a lot of depth, and their young players emerged finally. Jordan Poole was the best player in that series for Golden State, the whole series, and Gary Payton's son played a great closeout game. A lot of depth, but Memphis has a lot of depth too. I think they had the second best depth in the Western Conference after the Suns. They have a lot of young talent on that team. I love what they did with those comebacks too, and I'm curious to see how, with Golden State blowing out Denver the way they did, how battle-tested they really are in comparison to Memphis, who had all those comebacks and all that depth. I think Memphis could definitely win that series.
I absolutely believe it too, but they have to get an early lead because they do have home field advantage. Memphis is one of the best home teams in the NBA. Golden State also a very good home team. So if it comes down to game number 7, it definitely bodes well for the Memphis Grizzlies, who had a fantastic year. Ja Morant has really jumped all the point guards in the NBA. And you want to ask me who the best point guard in this series is? It's Ja Morant. I know everybody keeps thinking it's Steph Curry. The best guard in this series will be Ja Morant, who has been probably the best player in the playoffs right now. Averaging almost 30 points a game. He's averaging, 8 or 9 assists a game. Yeah. He's rebounding. He's dunking over people. I mean, he's shooting at a clip. He's been the best player in the playoffs, besides maybe Chris Paul.
And the Joker, I would say.
And the Joker, I mean, if he plays like that against the Golden State Warriors, Golden State's going to have to double team him. They're going to have to take Ja Morant out of the game. Yeah. If they can't take Ja Morant out of the game, they're going to have a huge problem because this Memphis Grizzly team is a very good defensive team. And they'll be able to do things that Denver couldn't do because Murray and Porter wasn't there.
Not only that, you're going to have to deal with a team that's 8 or 9 deep, too, with Memphis. They have a lot of good options. They do so many different starting lineup combinations, too, so it's not like you can just even get settled into one thing. They have Steven Adams, who's a good young big man, coming off the bench. That's how deep they are. Jaren Jackson, Dylan Brooks, Xavier Tillman's played well in this series. They got Brandon Clark as a guy off the bench. Kyle Anderson's a good veteran. They have so much guys they can rely on. And Ja Morant is a guy that, I know he's been scoring a lot overall, but he's still being pass first, too, and getting those guys involved. Really good open looks that have allowed these guys to succeed. And that's going to be a big test for Golden State, too. And also the size of Memphis, too. When you look at a guy like Brooks, who's 6'8", Tillman, Jaren Jackson, who's a phenomenal defensive player. That's going to be a big test for them, too, because they don't have James Wiseman and really only have one pure center on Kevon Looney. So that'll be the 2 big tests for Golden State. If their depth can outplay Memphis's and if their size could do well, too, because Memphis has a lot of good things going for them, too. And now they are battle tested. Look at all those comebacks. That's something that a young team doesn't do overnight, and they showed a lot.
Eastern Conference is pretty simple. Miami knocks off Atlanta. Not surprising. I mean, Oladipo, Jimmy Butler was hurt the last few games. He wasn't 100% healthy. Oladipo took over, and now he's 100% healthy. Now you're talking about arguably the most depth in all of the NBA and throughout the playoffs in Miami. A lot of people pick Miami to go to the NBA championship because of the depth that they have. And now that they have an offensive talent like Victor Oladipo, it's scary what Miami could be going into that Philadelphia series. And now Joel Embiid could be out a significant amount of time, could be out for the whole series. The best big man in the playoffs. You're looking at a Philadelphia team that's going to be depending on James Harden to do more than he has done in the playoffs for the Houston Rockets and the Brooklyn Nets. That is scary to think when you're going against arguably the team that has the most depth in this series.
And the best defense, too. Have fun with the Miami perimeter defense swarming James Harden for a guy that's already inefficient as it is in the playoffs. So, yeah, good luck with that if you don't get Joel Embiid back. Yeah, this is the other team that's 9 deep, though. Great coaching, phenomenal defense. And, yes, they get Oladipo back. They're going to get Butler back in this series, too. But they haven't even have to rely on them all the time either. Jimmy Butler was great the first 3 games, and then even game 4, they kind of used him more as a facilitator type, and it was the depth that got it going in that game. And then game 5, it was Oladipo that emerged really with 23 points. So they have so many just different options and ways to beat you. Good luck, Sixers. Good luck, Doc Rivers, your favorite coach.
Yeah, well, Doc Rivers looks like he'll lose another series against a team that is just that much better than him and better coached.
Well,
okay,
you can't blow a 3-1 lead if you don't win 3 games.
Philadelphia completely torched Toronto, and they lost a player by torching him. An orbital bone, hurting that kind of injury, that's your eye. He's either going to have to wear a mask and play with the pain. I don't know if he's going to be able to, if he can even see out of his eye. I don't expect Joel Embiid to be out for the whole series. I expect him to play, especially if they fall behind 2-0 against Miami.
Yeah.
I can't see that Joel Embiid doesn't show up in this series and try to play with the injury that he has. But he also has concussion protocol. He might not be back for a while. And this series could be very much over before it even starts.
Yep.
As far as the Milwaukee and Boston series, Milwaukee completely torched the Chicago Bulls. And a Chicago Bulls team that at one point was the number one seed in the Eastern Conference fell apart in the second half of the season, really just didn't wake up. DeRozan, again, didn't show up in the playoffs. And that's why, as much as he was an MVP candidate half the season, it shows you why nobody wanted to bring him in as a free agent. Everybody was torching the Knicks. You should have brought him in. You should have brought him in.
The Lakers, too.
He's another Julius Randle, a guy that just doesn't show up in the big games. And that's no offense to him. DeRozan's a great player. There are players that can do it in big games, and there are players that can't. He's just one of those players that can't. Milwaukee, they lost Middleton, and they still won that series. Hands down, it wasn't even close. And I think going into the series against Boston, Boston has the most depth. But Milwaukee has by far the best player in this class. Now, Tatum and Jaylen Brown, if they both play at the top of their games, that can withstand the Greek Freak. But the way they've played ever since they lost Middleton, and Middleton will not play in this series at all. He's out for this series. They won't see Middleton back until the Eastern Conference Finals. Right. If they get through this series against Boston, Milwaukee wins it all. I think with all the pressure that the Freak has on him, Boston's the best defensive team in the NBA. They were by far the best defensive team in the NBA. They have the Defensive Player of the Year on their team. If they can beat Boston, who is the number 2 seed, they should beat Miami because they will have Middleton back. As the Miami Heat has the most depth throughout the Eastern Conference, I think Milwaukee has more offense. They have more firepower than any one of these teams. So I think Milwaukee, if they get out of this round, which I believe they will, I think it'll go 7 games. I think Milwaukee, because they have the better player, and I believe what he's going to do, and I think he's the MVP of the league again this year. I think Milwaukee should beat the Boston Celtics in 7 games.
This is kind of like what I was saying about the Warriors and the Grizzlies. The Celtics are the depth team. They have all the talent because it's healthy right now. But the Bucks, the way they did it, they show that how battle-tested they are, kind of like what I was saying with the Grizzlies with all those comebacks. And winning with a lot of the new depth that has emerged. Grayson Allen, Pat Connaughton, Wesley Matthews, guys like that either they thought they were done or just like unknown guys in the NBA. So they're doing it with that. So if they can buckle down and beat the Celtics like that and win in a battle-tested way, it definitely proves a lot. I would probably still lean Celtics in 6 just with their defense, but I agree with you. If it goes to a 7th game, I like Milwaukee too. And Milwaukee's depth is still strong enough where it's not going to be just reliant on Giannis either. So that's going to make that series very interesting. I think they got the better coach, and they still have a good defense too. So I don't think the Celtics are going to be able to coast like they did against the Nets. Plus, they're going to be a little rusty too. They haven't played in a while. They swept the Nets last Monday and then haven't played since. I don't know if they'll lose, but I still think it's going to be a hard-fought series.